Welcome. My name is Michael Timcisco, and I'm so happy you're joining us for worship, wherever you may be. We are an inclusive congregation that welcomes you as you are, inclusive of all of your identities, complexities, and situations. We welcome your whole self, even if it isn't fully assembled, because we recognize that we are all a work in progress and that we are all in this together. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship. For this high purpose do we unite in worship. We kindle this flame with love for mothers and for mothers, past, present, and future. We kindle this flame in celebration of its generations. We kindle this flame with respect and support for the greater circle of life of which we are all part.
Welcome. Welcome to the right now. The right now includes beauty and pain and joy and sorrow. The right now includes you and me, and all that the right now asks is that we show up. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Lulu, and my mama taught me the power of food. Growing up, we were not only fortunate enough to have food on the table every night, but to also have a mom who is a wonderful cook. But she isn't just a good cook. She knows how to apply food. And I know that this is something she spent a long time practicing. She knows how to use food to tend to sadness, how to ease frustration and pain, and how to celebrate. She taught me how to bake with love, how to cook with joy, and how to connect with others through food. Watching her cook and learning how to make delicious dinners and bake wonderful desserts for our friends and family really showed me that feeding is an act of love, and it's something that really stuck with me. And through this lesson, I've actually managed to make a career out of this. My career in dietetics may not look exactly like creating and putting delicious food on the table, but rather the use of feeding in a healing way. My mama taught me that food is not simply fuel for our bodies. It is, but it's also a way to express ourselves, to find joy, and to heal. So thank you.
My name is Henry, and my mother is Nell Newton. And I decided to record this video in my work gear because something she taught me a long time ago is that uniforms are really powerful. Whether it be your exercise clothing or your work uniform or a martial arts outfit. My mom trains martial arts, the Tukang Musul study, and she is a master black belt. And I remember when I was a kid, she pointed out to me that those belts are really powerful for getting you into the state of mind for training. And it was never an overt lesson, like you must learn this, but it was something that I remembered for a while and something I see true in myself. Because when I get off work a lot, I'm still in my swimsuit, and I stay in my swimsuit for a few hours just because I'm in go mode. And it's always funny to acknowledge that she pointed that out to me, and I've seen that in myself throughout my life. So thank you, Mama. I love you.
Our congregation has a mission. Please join me in saying these words together. Our spiritual community lives courage, nurtures wonder, inspires justice, includes all.
At this time in our service, we recognize the joys and concerns of our community. This is a candle of joy. John and Elizabeth Flynn have been granted their license to begin being foster parents, and this is great news for our whole community, and we wish them well, and we look forward to supporting their work in parenting all who come to them. This is a candle of optimism. The congregation's COVID response team has begun working on a plan for how we can begin safely holding in-person worship. More details will be coming. This is a candle of joy for the rains we've had recently, and I hope that the hail did not damage any crops too badly. This is a candle of remembrance. 100 years ago, there was a riot in Tulsa. Do not forget, even if you were not taught about it. It's time we all remember. This is a candle of joy for Brinley's birthday. Happy birthday, Brinley. And this is a candle for all of the joys and concerns which were not shared with the community, yet are held and felt deeply in our hearts. And now, let us take a moment to follow our breath into the places we might have rushed over all week. With each breath, I invite you to go deeper and find that part of your own center that needs attention. Breathing in, breathing out. Mother of all beings, we call you into our hearts. We call you that we may be reminded that our loving one another is our greatest gift to you. As children of this earth, your children, you probably find us tiring and delightful. Our carelessness, our rudeness probably try your patience and irk you on a regular basis. But hopefully, our songs and dances and our ability to apologize, adapt, and begin again are signs that we are learning to be better to one another, better to all the beings on your shimmering web of all existence, better to the creative impulse in every cell and strand of DNA. Mother of all beings, don't give up on us just yet. We are learning with each breath. Breathing in, breathing out. Blessed be. Amen.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Mother's Day. And in honor of Mother's Day, I'm going to play a special song my mother used to sing for me when I was little. It's written by Peter, Paul, and Mary. It's called Puff the Magic Dragon. Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Little Jackie Paper, he loved that rascal Puff and brought him strings and sealing wax and other fancy stuff. Together they would travel on a boat with billowed sail, Jackie kept a lookout perched on Puff's gigantic tail. Noble kings and princes would bow whenever they came, and pirate ships would lower their flags when Puff roared out his name. Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea, and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea, and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Well, dragons live forever, but not so little boys. Painted wings and giant's rings make way for other toys. One gray night it happened, Jackie Paper came no more. Puff that mighty dragon, he ceased his fearless roar. His head was bowed in sorrow, green scales fell like rain. Puff no longer went to play along the cherry lane. Without his lifelong friend, Puff could not be brave. So Puff that mighty dragon sadly slipped into his cave. Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea, and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Puff the magic dragon, he lived by the sea, and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Happy Mother's Day.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share a story about my mother. My mother grew up in Pennsylvania, and when she was very young, she was being raised by a single mother that had to move in with the grandparents. My mother did attend a all-girls school when she was growing up. And of course, as with any school, there's playtime and playgrounds. And my mother told us this story to tell us how she first learned about discrimination and prejudice. So, while my mother was playing on the playground one day, that was a fenced-in playground. In fact, the whole school was sort of fenced in, that she saw a little black girl on the other side of the fence, just waving at her, asking her to come over, and my mother did. She went to that fence, and both little girls pressed their hands together. They exchanged names. The little girl's name was Annie. My mother's name was Jean. Annie, Jean, they're together at the fence, they're exchanging information, when a teacher comes up to my mother and tells her she has to come back to the playground. My mother said she didn't want to go back to the playground. She wanted to be there with her new friend Annie. And the teacher told my mother that Annie didn't belong there, and told my mother that she had to go back to the playground. My mother said, "But this is my new best friend Annie." And the teacher said, "No, she's not." And that was the time that my mother first learned about discrimination and prejudice. And it stuck with her whole life, to where she told each and every one of her children that story. And it made an impact on all of us. The only other thing that I want to add to that story is it was through that same fence that my mother, at the age of 16, met my father, who was 20. He told her they could never have a relationship because at the time he was a worker and an immigrant, and people like that were called cookies. My mother, seemingly from a more advantaged life, was called a cookie pusher. He said he didn't think that they would really have much of a chance at a relationship. Well, I'm so happy to say they had the most fantastic relationship. And it was met and began through that same fence.
So in 1974, my mom went to treatment for substance abuse. And that was a time when there were very few women in recovery and no teens in recovery, no adolescents. And so a few years later, when the first adolescent treatment center in the country opened up, my parents got licensed for foster care through that facility. And so over the years, when I was a kid, we probably had 30 different foster kids through that treatment center. My house was always the place where these kids would come for comfort and solace, kids, right, like dealing with childhood trauma. So 20 years later, when my mom got cancer, when it moved to her brain, and when she couldn't remember what day it was, when she couldn't remember her grandchildren's name, and when she got too sick to go to meetings, my home group of Narcotics Anonymous and those kids that she nurtured and took care of brought meetings to my mom. And one night when it was home group at my mom's house night, and I was getting ready for the meeting, my mom asked me to go to the store, and she asked me to pick up stuff for Jim's kids who were going to be coming to this meeting. And Jim had moved out of state like 5 years ago, but she didn't remember that. And I said, you know, Mom, Jim isn't coming to the meeting with his kids because Jim moved. She said, Krista, right? Like, I need you to go to the store. I need you to get these things because Jim's coming to the meeting and is bringing his kids. And we argued like that for a couple of minutes. And finally she said, Krista, you're going to go to the store because those kids will be here. And I feed hungry kids. That's what I do, Krista. And you don't argue with that. You just go to the store. And so when we moved here and I started teaching, and I found hungry kids in my classroom, you know, I don't think, what would Jesus do, right? Like, my thing is, what would Anita do? And so I started Snack Pack for Kids for Hereford. And I will always be grateful for the assistance that this fellowship provided me in doing what my mom taught me how to do. So happy Mother's Day, Mom, and I love you.
About my mother, I actually was born by a mother, like most of us. She was born in East Africa, would have been 107 years old now. And she was born there because her parents were missionaries in East Africa. That ended after World War I. And she learned, though, to live with all kinds of people. The major thing I remember was that she was very intense, teaching us that everybody is equal, color, religion, whatever, and that we needed to be curious for the rest of our lives because nothing mankind, science says is forever true, because it changes all the time, And so that gave me the basis to doubt what everybody tells me. We moved to a house in 1949. Some of you remember 1949. And we lived there, 4 children, and a big garden, and much to our dismay, we were ordered to weed vegetables and line up everything. But my mother was very certain that we needed to learn how to grow food, because during World War II, that's how many people survived. And she felt if you don't know how to grow food, things may not go well for you. She also expected us that we all get a higher education. That was based on my grandfather's idea that the only thing which you cannot lose is what is between your ears, and if you lose that, you don't care. So she was at times very strict, but extremely loving. Unfortunately, when I was 15, I wanted to fly the coop and see the world, and I was approved by the American Field Service Exchange Group to come to the United States. But my mom thought I was too young and too immature, and so she said no, I couldn't go. She was really not a hovering mom, which is the American way of momming. We were sent out and do whatever we needed to do to play, but there was no way to sit at home in the house. And if we got bruised up, she took care of us. She was a nurse. But I still remember her words that just because a little scratch, you just keep on living. The last wise thing was that she always said, don't do like most people. That is, they do their best, because when we say we do our best, we accept that we have limitations. You do what it takes.
Oh, well, my wonderful mother was better than a fairy godmother with a magic wand. My wonderful mother had a treadle sewing machine that she could help people. And when I was about 8 or 9 years old, we lived in a little village with a town pump, a grist mill, a blacksmith shop, and that year the school closed for 1 week so that the cotton farmers could get their cotton crop in. My friend Bobby was going to help her mother and daddy. Bobby had a job. She was going to pick cotton. I wanted a job picking cotton. I could pick a row right beside Bobby if I could get a job. And I had coveralls. I had a straw hat, but I did not have a cotton sack. However, my wonderful mother made me a white duck cotton sack with a strap that went over my shoulder that I could pull down that row right next to Bobby. We pull bowls. We pick cotton every day for a week. At the end of the week, I got to climb up in the wagon right on top of that cotton, and those horses pull that wagon right over to the cotton gin. I made $1.10 for working that week. Boy, thank goodness for my wonderful mother and her treadle sewing machine. Then, when I was 19, we had moved. Our little village had just kind of withered away, and so we had moved to Abilene. And my new husband was going to school on the GI Bill. I needed to apply for a secretary's job. I had learned to type. I'm not a natural typist, but I had learned to type. Now, starched feed sack dresses had gone out of style, but I had bought a navy blue suit from a friend who had moved away, and I could wear that to apply for a job. Sadly, that navy blue suit was too big. The padded shoulders fell off on both sides. But my wonderful mother still had her treadle sewing machine. She ripped apart that navy blue suit. She altered it. She sewed it up. Oh, it looks so neat on me. I had a lot of confidence. I applied for that secretary's job. I got that secretary's job, and thanks to my wonderful mother. Well, thanks for wonderful mothers everywhere, whether they have a treadle sewing machine or not. Thanks for wonderful mothers.
You have so many stories stored inside you, and inevitably, some of those stories will be from the people who mothered you. I want to explain first. Today, I'm talking about mothers. And when I'm talking about mothers, I am including all of those people who extended maternal care to a child, including stepmothers and adoptive mothers, foster mothers, friends' mothers, grandmothers, aunties, older sisters, teachers, and all of those others whose roles and genders don't fit neatly into boxes, but who offered that unconditional love that we all deserve and we all need. And because this month's worship theme is story, this is a good time to consider the stories you've been carrying as a result of the mothering you received. Maybe the story is just a tiny anecdote of a simple moment that revealed everything about your mother's heart. Maybe it's a whole saga of struggle and triumph over oppressions that bound her or pushed her to the margins. Maybe it was a moment when you were startled to realize that your mother had had a life before you showed up. Maybe it's a memory that was formed when you were young, but that now you understand completely differently since you grew up. Stories are containers to pass along the important lessons and make meaning out of the randomness of this world. And when it comes to the stories about the mothers in our lives, it's a way of paying tribute, of showing honor, of memorializing ordinary people. Most mothers don't get honored with a statue or have biographies written about them. Instead, they are remembered through the stories that we carry forward. Which is only fair, considering that mothers' bodies carry cells from each of their children. Each pregnancy leaves cellular traces in the mother's body, and she will carry those cells in her for the rest of her life. I take strange comfort in that knowledge. You see, for those who have experienced miscarriage or abortion or giving up a child to adoption, I want us to know that the child is still mingled in our own bodies. And for those of us whose mothers are now gone, quite truly a part of us went with them. So, we carry their wisdom and their silliness and their resourceful creativity and their love for this world when we tell their stories. I know it's quite possible that some of the stories you were carrying were meant to tell you who others wanted you to be. That doesn't mean that's who you are, but now you can take those stories and use those stories to contain those efforts while you create new stories that acknowledge who you actually are. Because there comes a point where you have to decide what to do with stories that no longer work or that you've outgrown. Some stories you might just set aside and allow them to fade. And other stories you will have to actively reinterpret or rewrite. Here's a story kind of like that. I heard the call to become a minister when I was a teenager, but my mother did not approve. She had hoped that I would go into academia, and she warned me away from ministry. She knew that ministers will always face financial and job insecurity, and she knew that any time a congregation struggles with change or conflict, the minister usually takes the hardest hit, and she did not want that for me. So, for many years, I would tell the story that I had wanted to be a minister, but that my mother had talked me out of it, and that worked for a few decades. But after a while, the story quit working. It quit making sense. It quit being me. So one day when I was in my late 40s and we were enjoying a very nice lunch, I announced that I was heading to seminary. I could see on her face that she was troubled. I tried to soften the news. I said, Mama, I know how bad ministry can go. I know that, but I'm supposed to be a minister. Besides, I'm a 5th degree black belt. They can't scare me. But the fear did not leave her eyes until it was replaced with pride when she finally heard me preach as a minister. I tell this story because it's true in so many different ways. I tell it because it reminds me that the warnings and the fear came from her protective love. And I tell it to remind myself that I can still rewrite the really important stories. But mostly, I tell that story to remind myself that even when faced with a difficult truth, she loved me unconditionally. Now, we are devoting this whole service to Mother's Day, and that's a risky practice because it's a complicated day. It's not even a religious holiday, and many people have seriously mixed feelings and experiences about their mothers and mothering, and many ministers avoid it entirely, or they just sort of focus on the history of the original Mother's Day proclamation, the pacifist origins. But I like Mother's Day for the very simple reason that it reminds me that part of our work is to love this world like a loving mother, a creative, caring, nurturing mother. We can begin by remembering the stories of how we were loved by mothers. Even if you were loved imperfectly by an imperfect human mother, you still have the opportunity to begin loving this world unconditionally. Take all of the stories of the people who mothered you, who gave you an unconditional love, and every other that you and every other person deserves and needs, and then begin to create the story of how you have loved this world unconditionally. Because you are a perfectly imperfect person, your love of this world will be perfectly imperfect, but it can still be a good story. It will be your story. And that's a story I look forward to hearing. May it be so. Blessed be.
At this time in our service, the congregation makes its financial offering. If you've made a pledge or would like to make a contribution, you can simply mail it into the office, or you can make it online on our YouTube landing page or our website, uuamarillo.org. On the homepage, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll find a blue Donate button. That'll take you to a place where you can donate securely through PayPal. If you've made a financial pledge this year, please keep up your pledge. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These things we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
As you go out into this world, please carry these words with you. You are beloved and belong in this world. Go in peace, and blessed be.